know what I hate? The biggest thing I hate is that it's a lot of people that talk about basketball and talk about the game, and it's players that are in terrible situations, in bad team situations. But there's players that are in great situations, and people would literally say that this player A, is better than player B just because he's in a better situation and he is doing more in a better team situation. That does not always work, and that is not always the case. Just because a player that is on a bad team, due to a lot of factors of why his team is not successful, due to the front office, due to the coaching, due to the roster makeup, does not mean that just because that player is balling and hooping, people love to talk about empty stats, it does not mean that player is bad. That just means he's doing all that he can do, and compared to a player that's in a team situation that's really good and is putting up great numbers and great stats, that does not necessarily make the player that is in a bad situation not better than a player that's in a good situation. So many factors that go involved into being in a winning environment. That's why people that talk about championships, it's kind of like a lot of things got to work for players to go out and win championships and for them to be successful. And it all starts with a team. That's why I get mad when people talk about like, this player isn't good or this player is not better than this player because he's in a loser situation. That's not true. That's why you always have to break down ability. That's why you have to look at all factors that takes place. If you swap this player and put him in this position, would he be more successful or less successful? And a lot of times you can put the guys that are in the terrible situations, better markets and better team situations, and then people are going to be like, wow, this player is really good. This player is really great. He's a future superstar. He's a MVP. That's why I love to say, like, a lot of these guys have superstar games and not superstar names. A lot of that has to do with the market that they're playing in and also the team makeup. Now, I will say, once these players are in these situations, once their rosters are improving and becoming better, and if they still struggle, then you can start looking at and start saying like, well, okay, he is a good player, he is a great player, but why is he not able to help his team win? That's when you have to start looking at those situations. You can't look at some of these rosters and sit up and say that it's Bradley Beal's fault that the Washington Wizards aren't winning games, that he's dropping 50 points and they're losing, or it's Zach LaVine's fault that he's dropping 30, 40, 50 points and they're losing. And then you look at the team around them, and then people say, well, Zach LaVine is a B-level player, and Bradley Beal is a B-level player. How are these guys B-level players when they're some of the best talents, top 12 in each of their rosters, and it's just, not roster, top 12 in each of their conferences, and it makes no sense because it's just kind of like you are what your team. Like, basketball is not an individual sport. Basketball is a team sport, so you're only going to be as successful as the team they place around you. A lot of these organizations, what they do, like the Phoenix Suns and like the Chicago Bulls, they have these great talents, and then the talents put up these crazy numbers, and then people look at the talents and say, well, they're the best players on their team, but they can't get it done. But in hindsight is these markets aren't really giving their all to these type of players. They're kind of like, okay, we know we got Zach LaVine, we know we got Devin Booker, but we believe in them, but we don't necessarily believe in them enough to go out and really build a contender around them. And that is a problem, because then you have these expectations that are placed on these guys' shoulders when you're really not giving them help and you really don't believe in them 100%. You can't have a superstar player and superstar talent on your team and not believe in them 100%, but then let them take all the heat for the lack of success because they're their best player on their team. And that's what really makes me frustrated. That's what really makes me angry, because I hear constantly guys talking in the media, talking all the time about how some of these players in bad team situations aren't as good as some of these players that are in good situations, when these players that are in bad situations are better and more talented than these players that are in, some of these players are in good situations. I'm not talking about like the LeBron James, the Kevin Durant's I'm not talking about that ilk, the Kawhi Leonard's. I'm not talking about those top players. I'm talking about players like Victor Oladipo. I'm talking about players like Chris Middleton. I'm talking about players, of that ilk, when people look at these situations and be like, well, Chris Middleton's better than Zach LaVine, or Chris Middleton's better than Bradley Beal, or, stuff like that. And it just kind of like, let's pump the brakes. That's not necessarily true. And even some superstar players, like you could look at Klay Thompson and you look at Bradley Beal. I always get in this constant debate with people. People love to say that Klay Thompson is better than Bradley Beal, but if you just look at it ability wise, Klay Thompson can't do some of the things that Bradley Beal can do on the basketball court, but Klay Thompson is in a winning situation and he has a great team around him and he benefits playing with Steph just like Steph benefits playing with him. So a lot of people are going to say that, Klay Thompson, because they're in a winning situation, winning environment, is better than players like Bradley Beal and Zach LaVine. And ability-wise, that's not even the case. But I really get frustrated. I really get annoyed when people love to just talk about some of these guys that are in these terrible situations and guys in good situations and love to just say that these guys are automatically better than the guys in a bad situation when 9 times out of 10, that is not true at all. It's just that some players are blessed and fortunate enough to play in great situations and others aren't. It's as simple as that. It doesn't make some of these players, if you really break down their games, doesn't make some of these players that are in better situations better than the players that are in bad situations.